Rock Talk.
Carrie, are you there?
Hi, this is Carrie Severino calling.
Hi, Carrie. All right, you are on the air. Sorry about the technical problems getting you on the phone, but we definitely want to talk to you today. Carrie Severino is Chief Counsel and Policy Director for the Judicial Crisis Network, and she was a clerk for Justice Thomas, which I think is just so awesome. We're happy to have on the show, and you can check out her website at judicialnetwork.com. So, glad we got you on. Before we get into the weeds on this judicial appointment thing of President Obama's, can you tell us about what Judicial Crisis Network does?
Yeah, our organization was founded to work on things like this, Supreme Court nominations, making sure we have judges who are going to be faithful to the Constitution and the laws. And now we also have expanded. We do briefs at the Supreme Court and talking about Supreme Court issues and also state judicial selection. People don't realize how important their state courts are. So we're trying to make sure on all fronts that we got judges who are doing the right thing by the Constitution and the law.
Awesome. Now, the constitutional law scholar Barack Obama wants people to think that Merrick Garland is a moderate, which is a lie that even the New York Times can't bring itself to repeat. But Garland seems like an odd choice to me. What do you think the administration is thinking, and what might be their endgame when they settled for him as their first prospective nominee?
You know, he's been on the short list for a long time. So actually, he's got a long history of really solid liberal credentials. I think some of the people on the left think because he's a really nice guy, he's kind of soft-spoken, that he would be really able to move some of the swing votes maybe because they know that despite being, personally kind of quiet, nice guy, that he's absolutely with them on the issues. And I think that's why he was chosen because they thought he'd be the best case to shift the court to the left. And that's what the president's agenda is.
Okay, Wes Pruden, who is one of my favorite opinion journalists, writing at the Washington Times, had some thoughts about this. He said the politicians, Barack Obama first among them, talk of politics as something an honest justice must rise above when politics is why and how Washington and the Republic exist at all. You might as well expect a cook to rise above groceries, a physician to rise above his pills and potions, or a courtesan to rise above her temptations in silk and lace. The president knows this and can take pride in finding a man of Mr. Garland's stature to participate in his shrewd stagecraft of campaign politics writ large. The roles of the actors have rarely been so sharply defined. The president and the Democrats defend justice, fair play, and good faith, demanding only what they call the president's constitutional right to appoint a justice. The Republicans vow to defend their constitutional right to advise and consent, even if that means advising the president that they do not consent and he should send them another candidate. So here's my question. Do you think the Republican Senate is going to hold the line on this?
Absolutely. I think Senator Mitch McConnell said there's a snowball's chance in hell of this nominee getting through, and that was even before he was nominated. I really think they're incredibly strong. The most solidarity I've seen amongst the Republican Senate in the whole time I've been looking at this. So I don't think he's moving. I think the question is just making sure the American people realize how valuable that they're having your voice is in the election, being able to really pick someone knowing that they're going to choose the next Supreme Court justice and maybe two or three more after that. And then if they realize that, moving on Merrick Garland, whether it's now or after the election, would mean putting the court in a 5-justice liberal majority for the next generation. That could mean really the end of the right to own a gun for your own self-defense in your home. It could mean giving free rein to the EPA and these unaccountable administrative agencies to really rewrite the laws that have been passed by Congress. A whole host of issues that would be really frightening for this country.
Yeah, that's bad stuff. What was concerning me was the number of Republican senators, not huge, but the number that are out there saying we should give him the respect of a hearing. Now, I realize this is individuals meeting with him, people like Jeff Flake, Susan Collins, Kelly Ayotte. But the question is this the crack in the dike, or is this just people being polite?
I think for the most part it's being polite. And the bottom line is these people aren't on the Judiciary Committee. They have no control over whether there's hearings in the first place. Senator Sessions and Senator Grassley on the Judiciary Committee is very resolute about this. He realizes the stakes here. I think if people meet with him to explain why they're not holding hearings, That's totally fine. But if you look at the history of, you used to have people who would stand up, they're Republican senators who'd say, well, the president was elected, so we have to, confirm whoever he puts up. That really misunderstands your constitutional role. As we were talking about, the advice and consent, and the Senate is supposed to push back on the president, especially when people elect them like we did the Republican Senate, because the president is taking his constitutional duties very lightly and trying to bowl over all of the limits on government. So I don't think that's going to mean things go anywhere. I think they want to just be courteous to the people. Some and even if one or two did kind of decide that they want to have a hearing, it doesn't matter. The bottom line is the nomination is not moving, and I think that's the best thing for the country. And it's reasonable to let the people have a voice, and we'll see what everyone says in November.
And meanwhile, why don't they invite Obama and Biden to hearings to explain why they don't mean now what they meant then?
I was just going to bring that up. It's a little bit amusing that they all did this, Biden, Obama, Schumer, they all made these kind of comments about, no, we can't nominate someone, or we can't confirm someone in a presidential election year, and now here they are all screaming about it.
Oh,
yeah.
absolutely.
Do your job, advice and consent doesn't mean that consent is automatic. It means advise and consent if the advice was followed. Well, guess what? We advised, he hasn't followed, and we don't have to consent.
Yeah, and there's a long history for this. There's all of the Supreme Court nominees and other nominees that have not gotten elected. Of the Supreme Court nominees, 2/3 didn't ever get a hearing or a vote, and that's just how the Senate operates sometimes. There's treaties that they don't necessarily bring up for a vote. There's all these different things. That's part of their job. The Democratic senators have been trumpeting on the floor of the Senate, oh, you're not doing your constitutional duty. And you know what the Washington Post fact-checker gave that one? 3 Pinocchios. I mean, it's clearly constitutional law scholars all, right? I mean, they are parroting this false line about the Constitution. They don't understand that the Senate's job is to be a check.
Mm-hmm. Is there you see an opportunity here to really educate the public about the two parts of the government that are responsible for the appointment process? And if so, are you guys into that, or?
Oh yeah, well we've been trying to make sure people realize that. I've been writing pieces in National Review Online explaining the president nominates, and that's different than the appointment power. He can only appoint with the Senate's consent, and that's the key. And I think actually, people are always trying to. The Democrats are trying to hammer the Republicans on this, but I think there's a lot of Democratic senators, especially, who are probably grateful this is not coming to a vote, because there's a lot of guys in red states who are not going to want to vote for someone the NRA just came out really strongly against, probably the most anti-gun senator in our time, someone who's going to just greenlight the EPA to undermine our entire energy industry, to do all these job-killing things. They're going to raise your energy prices that weren't authorized by Congress. And that's the bottom line, is if Congress wants to do this stuff, great, we can throw the bums out. But when you have unelected agencies like these bureaucrats that are just doing it themselves, we don't have a lot of recourse. That's why we have a democratic system. So we need the judges who are going to be a check on that system, who are going to perform their duty in that, and not just let the EPA run away with it. So I don't think people are, even the Democrat senators, ought to be scared about lining up with this guy.
I have a question for you. Is there a way that Obama could seat him or put him into place temporarily while the Senate is on break? Because the new Senate the Senate session ends, like 2 weeks or 10 days before Obama's out of office? So is it possible that he could sit him temporarily until they find someone else in that time?
I don't understand all of the arcane Senate procedure, but I have been assured by people who do that they're going to make sure there's no way this happens. I don't know, you lock the doors of Congress or something. somehow I really think there are procedural ways to make sure that window doesn't happen. Again, I'm amazed by the Republican unanimity on this question. Even people, like your own Senator Kelly Ayotte, who kind of endorsed Sotomayor going on. We were frustrated about that. This time, she has been really solid on this, and I think we've seen that in a lot of people. Lindsey Graham, who voted for Sotomayor, voted for Kagan. He said, if I get nominated, I'm not even voting for myself. So we've seen Republicans really, I think, come around and realize you can't just give away the court. The Democrats aren't going to play nice with you because you do. They play hardball every time. And so we need to make sure that we stand up to our constitutional duty to keep someone there who's going to defend the Constitution.
Didn't Harry Reid leave the Senate in session indefinitely to try to block nominees and appointments?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I think so. And that's something that's we're going to happen over the summer. There's going to have to be senators here gaveling in and out every few days. But I think it's absolutely worth it to make sure the president doesn't try to, sneak someone in there while the Senate's back is turned.
Okay, so a little off this topic onto something that this is a great opportunity for us. You clerked for Justice Clarence Thomas. Can you tell us what that was like, and maybe tell us something about him that might surprise us?
Yeah, he's just such an amazing man. So clerking at the Supreme Court is awesome in the first place because you get to see kind of behind the scenes how some of these amazing decisions are made. But Justice Thomas, I think, hands down the best person to work for. I think everyone thinks of him as being kind of quiet because from the bench he doesn't ask questions hardly ever. But behind the scenes, it was really hard to get your work done because if he comes into your office, you're going to be talking about college football. You're going to be talking about everything else going on in the world for the next 3 hours. He's so personable. He would know in the court. You'd walk by the janitor and he'd say, "Oh, how's your mom? I heard she was in the hospital." He's the same with the Chief Justice as he is with the janitor at the Supreme Court. He is just such an amazing and personable and genuine man. So I love him to death.
You filed another off sort of topic thing. You filed an amicus brief in support of Little Sisters for the Poor.
Yeah.
How is that case going? I don't know that I've paid enough attention to it.
Yeah, so we now have, this is kind of the next one after Hobby Lobby, and it's going to be argued on Wednesday. And it's one of the many cases that, gosh, the loss of Justice Scalia is going to really be felt on, because we know that Hobby Lobby was a 5-4 decision, and that said, when you open a business, you don't lose your First Amendment religious freedom. I think that was absolutely the right answer. Now the question is, can the government force religious nonprofits like the Little Sisters of the Poor, like Priests for Life, like a bunch of Protestant colleges and things, clearly religious, can it force them to violate their consciences through kind of clever accounting? They're saying, well, you're not going to have to pay for these contraceptives. We'll do it, but you have to let us use your plan to do that. And they're saying, look, this is still the insurance plan we're paying for, and it still violates our consciences. And to have the government telling you, no, don't worry, this isn't a problem for you religiously, is kind of galling. The government thinks they know more than all of these religious individuals what their religious belief requires. So, who knows how the case is going to come out? We have to see at arguments. If Justice Kennedy stays in favor of religious freedom and kind of that aspect, he loves the dignity of the human person. I'm hoping that's something he realizes. Religious freedom is part of our dignity. Even then, we only have a 4-4 split probably on this case, and we might have to rehear it again when we have a tie vote on the court.
You were on with Lou Dobbs, I believe it was, Fox News, and you said something about Scalia's vote only having an effect on so many cases. And so looking ahead at what we have while we have a 4-4 court, only 8 members, do you see any other cases that might be close, that might not be a problem? What do you think?
Yeah, there are a few cases that we think. One, for example, was a union case that was argued in January. It's rare that you can say for sure, practically, from oral arguments how it's going to happen, but that looked like it was guaranteed to be 5-4, and Justice Scalia would have been one of those 5-4 votes. It had to do with whether you can force non-union members to pay union dues. And I think it looks like the California teachers are going to be stuck paying dues to a union that's doing the opposite of what they want for a while if we had ended up with the 4-4 decision. That's one of them. We had an abortion case argued earlier this month that may also turn 4-4. That had to do with Texas health regulations on abortion clinics, just saying they had to be up to at least the same health standards as other outpatient surgery centers. And we know we've got 4 solid votes in the court kind of to overturn practically any health regulation on abortion, any regulation at all. And so that's going to come down to how Justice Kennedy votes. But even if he voted in favor of those regulations, that's still going to only be a 4-4 decision. So the court has a procedure for that. As I said, it only happens kind of in a handful of cases each year, and they'll just affirm the decision below, and you won't get a Supreme Court level precedent. So other courts might go differently until the case comes back up to the Supreme Court again, maybe with a different plaintiff, and then the Supreme Court can really give its final stamp on it. But they may also hold these cases until next year, and then when they have someone to break the tie, then we'll have another justice. I think, again, it probably will work out to maybe a handful of cases, and that's something that happens a lot of times when you have a justice die in office, because there's just no way you can have that tie-breaking vote until later on.
So would the case itself be be able to use the same, like say they voted on it and it's 4-4, would that person then be able to come back when there's 9 justices on the Supreme Court, or does it have to be another case that's brought?
It depends, because there's actually sometimes, we don't know what the court will do this time. Sometimes they actually just hold the case. They say, you know what, we're not going to decide this one until we have that tiebreaker vote. And then the case just kind of sits there in limbo. And when you get the additional justice, then they'll decide the case. And or sometimes they even do this just because, Citizens United, they did this. They had an oral argument, and then frankly the government conceded how dangerous their argument was for the First Amendment. They said it might ban books, etc. And they said, wait, let's re-argue this. So they just hold it over for another year. Justice moves slowly, unfortunately, and that happens sometimes. They also might just affirm the decision below, as I said. In that case, you would have to. That case is complete and final and done. You'd have to find another plaintiff who had the same constitutional concerns and bring them up. But I think in a lot of these cases, there's tons of other people that also could bring the court case. But it does mean another case, another set of lawyers coming up to the court. But I think they'll all be decided eventually. That's just the sad reality of Justice Scalia dying midterm. Is going to mean that there's some issues that we wanted to have decided, for good, and we're going to have to wait on.
We have about a minute left. How do people reach you or help your group or whatever?
Yeah, we're at judicialnetwork.com. We're on Twitter at Judicial Network, at Judicial Network, and at JCN Severino. And we're doing all we can to kind of educate people about this issue. I also blog at National Review Online's Bench Memos. So, I'll call your senator, encourage her to stay strong on this issue, because it's so important to make sure that we have the seat available for someone who's really worthy of filling Justice Scalia's shoes.
All right. Thanks so much for spending some time with us today.
Thanks.
All righty. Bye-bye. All right. We'll be right back. Short break. Going into the last part of the show. Stay tuned. Rock.